Welcome to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg White, and the other guy on the line is Jason Pridmore. Hey, JP, what's going on, man?
G-Dub, long week. Long week.
Yeah, long week, definitely.
Good week.
Yeah, sorry everyone, we're a little late on this one, but you know, Jason was traveling, I was traveling, his flights got delayed, so Thursday it is for this one.
Hey, G-Dub, what happened to the comeback? I like you derailed me here. What happened with the comeback?
There was a matter of I think I had a broken back protector because when I put my leathers on, I couldn't quite zip it up with the back protector in, so that kind of held me back a little bit. You know what I mean? I've got to, yeah.
Were you trying to get into your old Team Skulk leathers from back in the day? Is that what you were trying to do?
I can't even get my leg in those things. No, that's not it. Definitely not
You're
it.
Killing me, G.
Plus, I got a good little archery. I got some good coaching in today, and I shot earlier this morning with my new. I have a little big change in my shooting.
Yeah,
and it was like when it was really good, Jay. It was like really good, and when it was off the rails, it was off the rails. Like
it was gone for good. You lost the front.
Yeah.
I
usually don't shoot eights. All right, so you shoot 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, whatever. I usually don't shoot eights. I usually just shoot 10s and 9s. A lot of 9s. I shot way more 10s than I've ever shot, but I also shot like 7 8s of 72 shots.
Got it.
So like my average was virtually the same.
Yeah.
But had I just shot those 8s, 9s, I would have like broken my personal best. So I know I'm on the right track. So just like golf, it just takes a while. When you change something in your shot, you got to do something.
Yeah.
But how is Road America? Because
man,
the weather sure looked good Monday, Tuesday.
Well, you know, for us, those 3 days that we do our races, I think that we're very, very, very lucky to do what we do. But it is a lot of work, and there's a lot of things going on, and on those 3 days. So to get up Monday morning, it would be pretty difficult for me to get up and really want to go back to the racetrack. But when you got Road America, the weather was, dude, it was so perfect, and I had a really fun group of people that I just hung out with. Very rarely do I get to just go ride. And the great people of Sport Bike Track Time let me come up there and just ride with my friends. I mean, big thanks to those guys. And it was, the normal guys that it was, Doug Lincoln, him and Johnny LeConte do so much for me up in that area and region.
Hold on. I have to say special thanks to those two clowns too, because we were sitting there, I want to say it was Friday. They were at the racetrack and they said, look, we're going to ride down to Milwaukee right now and get you a set of leathers that fits, get you boots, get you, gloves. I, of course, was going to get an ARAI helmet. And you know what I mean? And I was like, you guys are here at the racetrack. Just enjoy it. Don't worry about it. Okay, I'm fine. I'm just going to skip this one, but I'll be back on the track. So special shout out to those guys because they were going to put the effort into it. And LeConte was on his way. I don't care. That old man, he's like, I forgot to set my DVR anyway. I've got to figure that one out.
Got to get back to Milwaukee to do it, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, those guys, they went to Australia with me this year, and they can't do enough. And especially if you're my friend or whatever, those guys just go above and beyond. So, again, big thanks to them. And then I rode with Alex Dumas. So I got to hang out with Francois a lot, who I just love. Alex's dad, he's the best guy. And Alex was on a 600. But there was a lot of MotoAmerica guys that hung out on Monday. Cam Peterson was there testing with Josh, because I didn't even get to talk to Josh Hayes, but he was there helping Cam, I believe. Jake Lewis was there testing. Chris Ulrich was out running around on a SV650 twin, like one of the bikes that I think Joe Blasius was racing on the weekend. So there was a bunch of people there that hung out and rode. And I don't know if we would have got that same response from just about any other track in the country, but Road America is such a special place that it was perfect. And I knew, when I didn't see you Monday that you probably weren't coming, but I also know you're getting ready for a tournament Saturday. So I know your coaches are out there for your shooting, but yeah, you were missed. But I'm going to throw something up on Instagram because you weren't completely forgotten. You weren't completely. And in fact, it was probably the fastest laps you've ever turned around there. I'm just going to say.
F you, pal. All right. That's not, probably right, though. You're probably
It'll be up on Instagram later for all you guys on the gram. I'll throw something up there a little bit later.
Wait a second. By the way, when you see it, there's on one side, there's a Bert and Ernie. On the other side, there's a Jason and Greg. So who's Bert and Ernie, dude?
I don't know.
Who's Bert and who's Ernie?
When I saw Dougie walking over to my bike and putting stuff on there, I was like, I was like, what's he doing? And, he put him over my mirrors, which was perfect. And I just left them there. I never even looked at my mirrors. I didn't even need them. I was out there riding with my friends and having a good time. And my friends from Hammer Time down there, those guys gave me bikes to use for the weekend. Just amazing ZX10. It's the first time I've ridden the 2019 ZX10, and it was fast. I was actually shocked at how fast that bike actually is, because I'd heard about the 19s to the 18s, and this thing was a ripper. So it was a blast. 2 great days, but it made for, yesterday you and I are both traveling home. So that's why we couldn't do our podcast yesterday. So thanks to all our listeners out there for bearing with us for an extra day.
Yeah, we definitely
but it was a busy weekend, GW, wasn't it?
It was a busy weekend. And why don't we start off with MotoGP, because we'll touch on MotoAmerica later. So why don't we start with MotoGP? Because I actually got up Sunday morning before we went to our racetrack and watched some of those races, Jason. And let me go through the MotoGP results. Like, we'll go MotoGP, then we'll go Moto2, Moto3. How's that sound? So in a crazy race, Danilo Petrucci won his very first as a Mission-Winnow Ducati factory rider. He won Pridmore, 0.0 Pridmore over Marc Marquez. That means 0.043.
Thank you.
Andrea Dovizioso finished 0.3 behind, and Alex Rins finished half a second behind. Then you had Takaaki Nakagami in his his first top 5 finish in MotoGP. It was great for him. And then the struggling Yamahas. I mean, the best Yamaha out there was Maverick Vinales, 7.4 back. Michele Pirro, the test rider for Mission-Winnow Ducati, finishing 13.2 back. Incredible. Then Cal Crutchlow in 8th. Polo Spargaro on the Red Bull KTM factory machine in 9th. Fabio Quartararo, who's down for some surgery, right, Jay, if you saw that?
I think did he get arm pump surgery, didn't he?
I think so, yeah.
Quartararo did, yep.
Alicia Spargaro, Joan Mir, Jorge Lorenzo back in 13th, Carol Abraham in 14th, Andrea Iannone, and then you have Miguel Oliveira in 16th, and Johan Zarco 17th. Non-finishers, Miller, Bagnaia, Hafid Sirene, Franco Morbidelli, and yes, a miserable Valentino Rossi. So, storylines in this one, Jason, for me, I'm going to kick it off, okay?
Do it.
Danilo Petrucci, easy peasy lemon squeezy, big win, unbelievable last lap. But the bigger storyline for me is, and I don't think you and I have talked about this yet, is that I think how you race Marquez was literally defined. You have got to gang race Marc Marquez. And it wasn't just Petrucci and Dovizioso. It was Rins, too, who was roughing Marquez up and obstructing his rhythm and making him burn up a tire. I just think that you've got to, like, one-on-one with Marquez, I don't think there's anyone in the field that can do it. But 3-on-1, and Petrucci won that battle. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. The Petrucci story to me is amazing. I think that this time last year, when it was announced that basically Lorenzo was moving on to Honda and everybody knew that they hired Petrucci, me included, I was like, wow, Petrucci jumping up to the factory team. I was skeptical. And the funny thing is, I really liked the guy. I really wanted to see him win. And I think that when you have that kind of pressure on you, and it was always between Miller and Petrucci for that factory seat. Petrucci kind of won out on that deal. And make no mistake about it that, right now, Jack Miller's on a 2019 Ducati. So his bike is, if not exactly the same, only a tick off of what Petrucci is riding. And he's been riding very well. But I don't know, Greg, it just doesn't get any better, does it, that an Italian wins in Italy on an Italian brand? And for it to be his first win, I can't imagine how big that must have been and the weight that was lifted off of his shoulders. So the pass itself was incredible. He showed a lot of confidence even leading the last lap. It didn't look like there were any nerves or anything. He just put his head down. But I think he hit it a little bit too. To beat the two guys that are kind of the protagonist of the championship that everybody talks about, to beat those two in a straight up fight, I don't know how it could get any better for him.
No, I agree with you. I also think another storyline has to be obviously the speed of the Repsol Honda. Jay,
Yep.
Listening to the commentators, they were like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? Dovizioso even said he was surprised at the speed of the Honda. I wasn't. I mean, they haven't changed motors.
I wasn't.
They haven't changed the motors at all. So the only thing they're really working on is probably the way the power gets to the ground. That can either be with, chassis, suspension parts, swing arm, whatever, and electronics. But it's a fast motorcycle. It has been since the beginning of the year, and it's not like the
True.
Honda's been blown out of the water. Then all of a sudden it shows up. So I just think that was kind of like a talking point after the race that was for me completely unnecessary.
Agreed. Agreed. The Honda has shown its speed all year, and you saw where Marquez said that he got double draft going down the front straightaway on that last lap and just got drawn in there a little bit. And that's what ultimately opened up the door for Petrucci to go through on the inside, which was just an incredible pass. But no, the speed of the Honda has been there all year long at Doha and other places. It's been there. It's not, and really the biggest problem that they've been having is, based from tip in to apex. That's what all the other riders kind of complain about. I guess Marquez probably talks about it a little bit, but he doesn't seem to really mind it. He kind of gets on with it. So that battle at the front between those three was great. And you cannot can't forget Alex Rins. I mean, again,
Rins,
this kid comes from back again a little bit on the grid and fought the entire way. I mean, he was only half a second off. I was looking at, Greg, I can't remember where it was, but I was looking at where they kind of rate the riders for the weekend. And they basically said,
Crash.net, where they do their little video.
Where they do the little video of, and it basically they rated him like an 8 or a 7 or something. And they said, once again, he gets up to the front and then and it was like kind of like basically he stalls out. And I'm like, are these guys on crack? Me? Like, are these guys on crack? Like, the guy's on a Suzuki doing incredible work, finishing these races. Even after Le Mans, we talked about that. He had a pretty crappy result there. It comes back to this one and races these guys at the front. And if you want to talk about speed deficiencies, sadly right now the Suzuki's down a little bit speed deficiency wise. And he couldn't draft those guys or draft past them for sure. But he was there again, and he was aggressive. He was passing in some great spots. If you watch the last lap of that race, when they're going through Arabietti 1 and 2, the double rights up the hill, dude, he's got that thing like sideways trying to run with these guys to be close enough to them with 5-6 corners to go. And Rins was just, I loved it. I thought he was incredible again. Good points in the bank. So
the thing is, I would probably have to rate Danilo as the best ride. He obviously won, but Rins has got the second best ride because he was totally out horsepowered, and you take the most risks on the edge of the tire. That's just the way motorcycle road racing works. So Rins was having to take more risks to keep that pace than any of the three guys in front of him. And I get it's a half a second, but really he was a lot closer than that all told. And I thought it was a great race. And I can't remember, someone posted a little, who was it? Someone I know, and I was really shocked. But anyway, they posted a little video of Rins coming in to the, afterwards. And obviously he goes straight to the pit box. And I mean, you'd think that Suzuki won the race. And I have to agree with them. I mean, they were celebrating like Rich Oliver used to celebrate his, 50th freaking 250 win by 40 seconds. You know what I mean? And I think it was well deserved. Yeah, I mean, because
100%,
because they're at a deficit on the motor side of things, and he just rode that motorcycle. They're all in the same tires, basically. So, different compounds. Maybe I didn't check it, but nonetheless, they're on the same tires. So Rins rode it, man, and I thought it was a fantastic race at a very high speed track, the highest speeds that we have in GP.
Does he win again this year?
Oh my God, yeah, for sure.
I think so too. I think we're going to go to some tracks where the Suzuki will shine again, and I don't think that necessarily Coda would have been the track that I would have picked him to win, and he did it there. And I think that that's going to happen again. You said it to start with too. Takaki Nakagami, incredible ride for fifth, kind of a little bit overshadowed perhaps because of the race at the front and the impact that Petrucci has being an Italian on a Ducati winning there. Maybe something gets taken away, but you can't say enough about Nakagami. He's been riding incredible this year. And I got to say, when you look at the rest of the top 10, the other two that really come to the forefront for me are Michele Pirro. I mean, the guy with the most, I would say, the best job in motorcycle racing right this second. This weekend, Greg, he's racing in Jerez on World Superbike for Ducati.
Yeah.
How awesome is that? He goes from Mugello on a MotoGP, puts it in the top 10, finishes 7th, only 13.2 off the victory. So he's basically only 13 seconds off the two guys he runs that bike around for, meaning Petrucci and Dovi. So an incredible ride. Then he goes to Jerez this weekend to ride the factory Ducati there that he also gets to test. So big shout to Michele Pirro. And I mean, you can't say it enough again. Paul Espargaro finishing ninth on the KTM. He's a consistent top tenor right now, only 16 and a half seconds off the win again. And I just sit there and you think to yourself, like, is Paul Espargaro on that KTM bike really that much better than Jorge Lorenzo on the Repsol Honda right now? I mean, he finishes 4 seconds behind Espargaro, does Lorenzo, and it's you just could. I honestly could say I just didn't see that coming. I figured Lorenzo would be somewhere up in that top 8 on a bad day. He's not even close. But Paul Espargaro, I also would not have said that if you told me that all of his KTM counterparts were going to be out of the points or not finishing the race, but Espargaro is going to be up in the top 10, only 16 clicks off, I don't know if I would have believed that either.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Awesome job. And
yeah,
I just love,
really,
I love
really
the,
good.
I love the Nakagami story only because, you think about, okay, if Marquez is doing what he's doing on that Honda, but no one else is, and Nakagami's beating the rest of the factory bikes, which is Crutchlow's and Lorenzo's 19 machines, how good was the 18 bike? So
right.
And we got to talk about Rossi, dude. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
as much as I love Valentino, it looks like he or the team, they've just lost the plot at this point. There's just something majorly wrong with what's going on over at the Monster Energy Yamaha MotoGP team.
Well, Greg, it looked like there was some screwing around in qualifying that really hosed him, because when I watched that, I believe it was Rins that was behind him, but Rins had already done a lap time to get himself, I believe, into Q2. He was in Q1. They both were. And it looked like there was some, they were playing around a little bit. And Rossi missed his window of getting across the line by, I believe, 1 second. Literally, he missed getting across the line by 1 second to really go start a fast lap. And it put him on the heels right off the bat. I mean, it just seems very, very difficult to be able to qualify so far back and move forward. And Rossi's shown that he has been able to do that. When you look at Dovi didn't get through Q1 either. He was way back on the grid and got just such an incredible start. They found something in Sunday morning warm-up as well, or even maybe it was free practice 4 before qualifying. He found something and things were working out all right for him. But he came from, I think, 3rd or 4th row on the grid himself and puts himself up there. So I don't know, the Rossi thing, it's so impossible to write the guy off, obviously, but and really, you think at Le Mans, he was right there. If you remember, he came from a long way back. He was in that lead group, just had to start too far back. And the Yamaha is showing itself to be hard to pass people. Quartararo is qualifying incredible, and he's back there running 10th.
Maybe
So
it's just
Yamaha,
that we're not used to seeing Rossi have bad luck, because he's just had amazing luck for most of his career. He's had a few bad times. I'm not saying he hasn't, obviously injuries and things like that, but maybe it's just kind of, losing the rhythm of the weekend or something like that. But
I've never seen a weekend like that ever. I mean, I can honestly say I don't think I've ever seen a weekend like that for Rossi, especially at Mugello, where he's always comes out with his new helmet there, and there's always a lot of hype. And I mean, the yellow smoke's ready to go in every corner, basically. The thing is that not only was he not even a factor in the race for the first few laps, he was battling with Joan Mir and actually hit him. They both end up running off the racetrack and going back to dead last. And Rossi, it wasn't so much that he crashed out of last place or last bike running at the time. I mean, 22nd or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he crashed in a very fast turn. Arrabbiati 2, I believe, is where he crashed. I just don't even remember seeing a weekend where there was nothing really that you could point at and go, well, that's a positive,
right.
Right. Like, that's a positive. Everything just seemed negative. So
that's
anyways,
true.
but
all right, wrapping up the points real quick, Jay.
Do it.
So Marquez is 115, Dovizioso with 103. So Marquez had said after the race, okay, I finished second, I'm on the podium. The only real goal was to beat Dovizioso. So you could tell already round 6 that Marquez is thinking championship, as he always does, even from race number 1 after his crash. It raced 3 at Circuit of the Americas. So you have Rins, who's 88 points. So he's, not way out of it, but he's getting there. Petrucci kind of jumps himself up with 82, and Rossi in fifth place at 72. Then you have this big jump back to Miller, Crutchlow, those guys at 42, 40, Vinales, Nakagami. It shows you just how difficult it can be, not just to finish consistently in MotoGP, but also to finish up front. So that's kind of where we sit with that one.
Don't you kind of get the feeling that I look at Marquez now and I sit there and I think he's sort of played it out. There's nobody that's really showing that they're going to be at the front every weekend other than Dovi and Rins, right? Those are kind of the two guys that have kind of shown that every weekend they're going to be in that top 4 or 5, with the exception of Rins at Le Mans. I think that he has basically looked at it like, I got to beat Dovi once I'm out there, because he even said that once he saw it was Petrucci that took the lead out of turn 1, he was kind of like, oh, okay, that's fine. It's Petrucci. He's going to throw the kitchen sink at him. But if he doesn't beat Petrucci, it's not a big loss as long as he beats Dovi and just pads that point. I mean, it was funny. They said when they were getting introduced in the press conference, Greg, they said Marquez's worst result of the year when finishing. and I had to think about it for a second, because he finished second. It was his worst result of the year of the races he finished. He legitimately could have just about won.
Yeah.
Most of the races, obviously, all of the races he was in. So, I think that he just is looking at Dovi as like, okay, I need to get a 25-point lead on this guy, and then I'm going to be kind of comfortable, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if you saw on MotoGP's Instagram a couple days ago, they actually had a video with a split screen, and it was the last lap of the race, basically. And it was split screen onboard camera coming off of. It's really good if you watch it.
I gotta watch it.
Yeah,
I think you've told me about watching a couple of those races from start to finish on.
Onboards, 100%.
On the onboards, and I'm so into that. So I gotta catch up on that stuff and watch it, because I think
when you see it, Jason,
I think
you'll see where the race was won. To me, was obviously, I mean, logically, it was the pass back that Petrucci made after turn 1, like at the exit, whatever. That's so that pass back. But where it was really won, where Petrucci got the run, was about 3 corners to the end, and there was a little bit of drive off the corner that Marquez didn't get. And if you look at the timing of the draft and pass where the start finish line was, it was like that gap that really did it for Petrucci. Now he doesn't know. There's no rear view mirrors, that type of thing. Right. But if you watch it, it's very interesting just to see the seesaw back and forth. You see the strength of the Ducati, and Petrucci's bike just wasn't moving around as much as Marquez's bike. It also gives you a very good perspective of how late in the race, how much energy it takes to race that MotoGP bike, because Marquez's bike is moving constantly. I mean, it's front end moving, rear end moving. It's just, it's not a tidy package that you think it would be to be able to do those lap times. The kid's incredible,
But there's a lot to be said about that, isn't there, Greg? About people who continuously working on setup and setup and setup and setup. It's like there comes a point where there's just not anything really.
You got to ride it.
There's no such thing as a perfect motorcycle, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that you've got to figure out how to ride things. And when you look at what Marquez does, he just sort of gets on with it. Now, speaking of Marquez's, in Moto 2, Greg, I was really happy to see, is this finally what the hype has kind of been about? Is this, I love Alex Marquez. I've really wanted to see him do well. I've always thought it would be difficult to follow somebody as his brother, Mark. It's got to be a tough chore. Everybody says that he's got the ride because of his brother and this and that. Let's not make any mistake. Alex Marquez has a Moto3 World Championship, and he's won numerous Moto2 races, but I don't think he's ever won 2 back-to-back. And in this weekend, when you look at the margin of victory being 1.9 seconds, it really wasn't even that close. Alex Marquez dominated a Moto2 race to me. Luca Marini ends up second, Thomas Luthi third. Baldassari and his teammate Augusto Fernandez finished 4th and 5th. Bastianini, again, our guy up from Moto3, he's definitely stepped up and done a very good job this year. Finishes 6th. Navarro, Schroeder, Sam Lowe's finishes 9th. Fabio Di Gianantonio, 10th. Back through the points, we got Mattia Passini with his new Petronas Sprinter racing ride, the second time out on that bike for him. Doing very good. Xavi Vierge, Remy Gardner, 13th. Followed closely by his teammate Nagashima in 14th, and then really the probably the biggest shocker, and I'm hearing a lot of very unhappy things are going on with the Red Bull KTM team, but Brad Binder ends up 15th. a guy I think you and I both thought was going to be up there for the championship. But what did you take away from Marquez's win here in Moto 2?
It was good. He didn't get a great start. It was kind of methodical. He made smart passes. He made very little mistakes. But Moto 2 was a bit of a snoozer. I mean, the problem with the problem with Moto 2, and on a normal day, they go back. I mean, the director, who's a good friend of ours, Enrique Sierra, and his team, they do a good job of trying to paint this race and make it a race. And obviously, there was some stuff going on between Marini and Lutti and Baldassarri and AF. I love, by the way, Augusto Fernandez has AF on the butt of his leathers.
Yep.
If you're a kid, you understand what that means. If you're an adult, just Google it.
Yes.
Anyway, but I just thought it was a methodical race by Alex Marquez. I thought he played it smart. He got out to the lead. He managed the pace. He did what he needed to do. He never came under any real fire. So a good, solid race. Looking at the chassis, there's in the top 15 in the points paying positions, 12 of them are Kalex frames. You have a speed up that was Jorge Navarro's in 7th. You have another speed up by DG Antonio's in 10th. And then that 15th place is your first KTM chassis. And it goes like KTM, MV Agusta. Okay, there's a Kalex in there by Locatelli, an NTS, but then KTM, NTS, KTM, Kalex. It's like, we've got a problem, Super bum, though, for the American racing team, because you had your boy Iker Lecuona out on the first lap, and then Joe Roberts didn't finish either. Yeah.
Did you see that crash by Lecuona? Absolutely cleaned out. Like he's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Two guys get together. One guy just stands it straight up and just slams into the side of Lecuona, who he had nowhere. He just had zero place to go. And Greg, you bring up such a good point, because you and I look at the results in this, and man, basically from 18th place back, you had one Kalex, but all the rest are KTM's, MV Agustas, and so on. And when you look at Binder, he has Moto3 world champion Jorge Martin as his teammate. They end up a 10th apart, right? They come across the line side by side, right, basically with each other.
Yeah.
So obviously they're both pushing that bike as much as they can and getting the most out of it, but that's where the bike is right now. And I'm hearing rumblings already of, Binder just being completely unhappy, wanting to go do something else, and so on and so forth. So, it's not going to be long before we start hearing the murmurs of what riders are going to what teams in 2020. But Binder, we for sure know he's better than 15th. I think with the Alex Marquez thing, coming from the same family as his brother, there's always got to be, they got to think alike all the time. They got to be kind of the same people. Not that brothers are always the same, but when you look at the environment that they're in, I feel like if something clicks for him, as it has these last two rounds, that this championship now could be well in the hands. There's already murmurs of him going to MotoGP for 2020 as well. It's that time. It's time for him to step up. And I think he's done that. Did you see the Instagram picture? I think it was on Mark's Instagram of Alex is coming into the pits and Mark's running alongside of him, grabbing his helmet, like just shaking his helmet, like excited. Did you see that picture?
No, I didn't see that. That's awesome.
It's a great shot. So, but yeah, it was also good to see Luca Marini step up too, because he won some races at the end of last year. He's been off pace, had shoulder surgery, so on. So the Sky Racing Team VR46 rider, who I believe he's Rossi's cousin, basically he's been off pace a little bit this year. So for him to get second, I think was also a big step forward. So
in the points, 88 points for Baldassarri. Yeah, 88 points for Baldassarri, 86 for Marquez, 84 for Luthi. So you're talking about 4 points separating the top three.
Wow.
It's a great championship. Anything can happen in that class. But with a whatever it was, Jason, a 1.9 second margin of victory, that race ended up being pedestrian compared to Moto 3. And here's the thing. Here's the thing about Moto 3. I mean, I don't even know how to begin to talk about this class, Jay, because the margin of victory is 29 hundredths of a second. So Tony Arbolino, the Italian, wins his very first one on a Honda. Lorenzo Della Porta, you could tell the Honda was absolutely ripping. So he's in second place, 0.029 behind. .078 behind the leader is Masia. Then you had Antonelli, Foggia. You had little McPhee, John McPhee in 6th place. You had Canet in 7th. I believe still your championship points leader, but hanging on by a thread. You had Suzuki. Tatsuki Suzuki he led early. He was in the mix. You have Vietti and you have Binder. Fernandez in 11th. Arenas in 12th. Garcia in 13th. That's the Sergio. Jakob Kornfeld, the old Red Bull KTM rider, in 14th. And Yurchenko out of Kazakhstan, I believe, in 15th. That's your last of your points. A lot of attrition in this race. I think 10 or 11 riders out. But 8 riders from 1 to 8 within half a second, 0.5. Was a gnarly race.
Yeah. So basically, Greg and I travel like we said all the time. And the first thing I said to you when I got home, because I got to watch these races, and you went back and you were going to watch them. I said, Greg, you got to watch this, because at one of the laps they came across into turn 1 and they were 8 or 9 wide.
Yeah,
going into turn 1. And I mean, this isn't like the start. This is like lap 6, 7, 8,
whatever. It was lap 9. It was lap 9, Jay. Because after you told me, I went back and looked at it, and I was like, you got to stop yourself. We're deep in this race. It was so tight. It looked like the opening laps on lap 9, where everybody's all bunched up. It was crazy.
Yes. I mean, Sergio Garcia finishes 13th, and to most be like, oh, he finished 13th. Yeah, he was 2.5 off in 13th.
Unreal.
And he basically had a train wreck going on in front of him every single lap for the last 2 or 3 laps, because there's nowhere for him to actually go. And what was really crazy about that race was you had 10, 12, 14 guys in that lead group, and they would split off and have like 2 or 3 second lead on another 8 or 9 guys battling for 16th and back. All of a sudden, that gap just disintegrates. And so you got 20 guys plus in that lead group again. And I think that the only way I could really describe it is if you go to a go-kart track with all of your friends and there's 15 of you and you're in the back of that line, how hard it is to get through to the front and without running into and slamming each other. That's what that race reminds me of. And it's sometimes the funnest part about that race for me is just watching one guy. Just keep your eye on one person and watch how they kind of slinky up front, then they go back, and then they come back up front. But Tony Arbolino, and correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, because I heard a stat that this is the 11th different winner in the last 11 races.
Yeah, that's true, because
in Moto3.
Last time we talked about Moto3, right? It was 10 and 10. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was it? Okay, yeah. I mean, that's insane to me to think about, like,
think about the percentage,
what a great
Jason.
Series to see.
There's only 30 riders or whatever it is, right? 31 riders. So think about the percentage that you're talking about of.
It's insane.
Like, you're a gambling man. Okay. What would the stat line be on 13 winners in 13 races, or 12? Like the improbability, the statistical improbability of that has got to be tremendous at this point.
It would definitely, it's almost impossible to lay a line on all these races, because you just don't really know. Yeah, you don't really know who's going to win, do you? I mean, it's that close all the time, but it's one. Honestly, I love watching just about more than any of them, and it would be fun to ask some of these guys 2-3 years from now, when they go to Moto2 or MotoGP. I mean, I don't know if you ask Alex Marquez right now, was it harder to win Moto3 races or Moto2 races? It'd just be interesting to kind of hear what he says, because it just seems like you've always got 2 or 3, 4 times the amount of people up at the front of these Moto3 races than you do Moto2.
Yeah.
So like and right now, like we say, even with Marc Marquez, the speeds obviously are tremendously different than Moto3 bikes, and the bikes are harder to ride and yada, yada, yada. But I'm talking just from a racecraft standpoint, where you're racing against people. Right now, he's lining up every weekend hoping to beat Dovi, because that's the guy he thinks he needs to beat. You just let your guard down for one tiny second in these Moto3 races, and you go from 2nd to 16th, and you got the leader a hand touch away from you, but you're 16th place, and you've gone from scoring a couple points to scoring 0, right?
Yeah.
So it's, to me, that the racing's, if you don't watch that, man, it's you got to watch it. You got to watch it.
Now, Jay, let me.
These guys go off to.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to ask you what you thought about Della Porta's ride, because I thought that Della Porta kind of early on he looked a bit ragged at times. You know what I mean? So
He did, and he did look a little bit ragged. And then isn't it weird how? But Greg, I think that I've seen Della Porta look completely polished and look good, but there was times in that race where I didn't think he was going to finish. Like I think specifically the first maybe 4 or 5 laps of that race, I was like, what is he doing? Like what is he doing? Because it's kind of like when you see people charging through one another on the freeway and there's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere to go. And in this race, you've got to know every year. I would almost just think in just about any Moto3 race that the chances of getting away from the guys behind you are so slim. I mean, we saw Jorge Martin do it time and time last year, where he would just find a way to make that break and then just go win races by 6 seconds. And you just don't see that. You just don't see that. So I agree with you. He looked a little bit out of sorts a little bit, but Della Porta, he kind of came into this series, Greg, as the guy to like everybody thought was going to win the championship. And I think that it's proven to be a little bit more difficult than that. And when you look at the championship points, he did get that good result. He's second in the points right now to Canet, 83 to 80. Antonelli just only 13 back there with 70. And then you got Jami Masia, who's had actually not that great of a year, but he's right in the championship point, 18 bats. And then you got Vietti in fifth. So when you look at it, Della Porta, he's going to be tough to beat. Canet has shown tremendous consistency and even threw a win in there. But what they go to the track you've been to next, right? They go to Barcelona, they go to Catalunya next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fun racetrack.
Yep. I remember you talking to me about that place.
That place can at times create some separation because setup is important because there's a couple very technical corners on that racetrack, a couple places where you really need to be patient. So I am going to be very interested to watch Moto3. I'm going to predict now that we're not going to have 13 that are going to be within 2.5 seconds. I think that track tends to separate, but I still think we're going to have 3 or 4. And the 3 or 4 up front that'll battle most likely will be the contenders for the championship. That's going to be my guess in this one. Because then you're going to allow the faster riders to settle down a bit. But it should be fun to watch, no doubt.
No, I'm looking forward to the whole week. And we got a really fun next couple of weeks, but with we got World Superbike, then we got MotoGP, and we also, Greg, we're going to be heading off to Utah. But this last weekend, obviously, we were at Road America, and tremendous racing throughout. MotoAmerica right now, it's really easy for you and I to be biased because we're there, but I am genuinely excited for every green light that goes off because all of our racing is so close. It's so good. We've got, we might not have the biggest grid in the world in Superbike right now, but our racing is amazing where we want it, which is up at the front. And in race one, I'll go through a couple of the results real quick, just in the races, just so we can know who our main players were. But it seemed like it was a different Tony Elias this weekend than we've seen. We know how pivotal this round was in 2018. But Tony came into this round with a points lead over Cameron Beaubier. And when they crossed the line after the first day, it was Elias, Beaubier, Garrett Gerloff with a tremendous third. Josh Herron, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, here in a minute, got into I wouldn't even say it was an altercation, but him and Tony got into it on the last lap. He ends up fourth. Matthew Skoltz fifth. Peterson, who is really starting to show some great speed, is Cameron. Peterson sixth. JD Beach, who we know had a problem, but got the bike running again, seventh. Gagne eighth. David Anthony ninth, and Jake Lewis 10th, who had a horrendous weekend, I think, by all steps in his thing. And we'll talk about that too. I think when you look back at that first race, everything kind of goes to the last lap where Josh Herron goes past his teammate on the run down to turn 5. And Tony did Tony. He went to the inside, had the thing back then. There was no contact made between the two riders. They both said that. So, and Josh just basically got pushed off a track, and he made a big lunge at Garrett for third down into Canada corner and couldn't make it work. But what did you think of race one?
I just thought it was great. I obviously the margin of victory, 0.2 of a second. I love it. It was, there's so many things going on. The situation between Josh Herron, Tony Elias, and the Yoshimura Suzuki team is a very complex issue. At the moment, it's not go out and race, boys, and see what happens. There's a lot on the line from a lot of different avenues, a lot of different channels. There's Yoshimura Suzuki. What are they going to do next year? They back with how many riders? Josh Herron has a 1-year deal. He's riding for a job. he doesn't want to take out the championship points leader. Does he race him? Does he not race him? You know what I mean? There's, who's developing the bike, who's not, it's just a lot of stuff going on there that's wrapped up in that. And I think that Josh Herrin is doing the best job he can, which in my view is a very good job of managing all the noise that's we don't hear and go out there and race the motorcycle. And Josh Herrin is racing for a contract, whether it's for Yosh next year, whether it's for another team next year. He's racing for win bonuses. And he also races for the fans. He understands he puts a show on. So I just thought that was good. Unbelievable, though, his save in turn 5. Like the way he got the thing up on the meat of the tire, way off the racetrack and kept driving. I thought, dude, the dude just got crazy, crazy skills on the motorcycle. The fact that, yeah.
When you got Josh Hayes coming up to me at Buttonwillow and going, I just followed Josh Herrin around the track for a little bit, and he's doing things that I have no chance of doing on a motorcycle. That's coming from Josh Hayes talking about Herrin. As great as what he did there in turn 5, getting the bike as far out of the track as it was and getting it back on to even continue to contend for that podium spot. As great as that was, how about the save on the exit of turn 7 early when he touches the white paint that still had a little bit of water residue on it?
Yep.
I don't even know how he saved that. I mean, in the sense that I don't really know that there's much ride skill that you can do there. You're a little bit of a passenger, and he did it while the bike was upright. He was lucky, but that thing snapped on him so hard. And I don't think that any of us ever talk about Herrin's. His motorcycle skills are insane. There are days when that guy looks unbeatable to me. And really, the first day, I thought he did a really good job in that race. I said it on the telecast that when you pass a guy down the left-hand side like that going into turn 5, just stay to the left. There's no reason. There's no big, long straightaway after this turn. You can control the apex of turn 5 tighter if you go in there tight. You can, once you're in that lead, you can really control what the guys behind you are doing. And really all he did is he just opened up the line a little bit and allowed Tony to come in, and there was no give in. There was no Josh is trying to win. You mentioned he's got all these things on the line, and he's a racer, but he just got pushed off the track. But there was no contact made between the two. And I know Josh was a little angry maybe after the race on our telecast, but you could see by the time he got to turn 5, hand was out. He said all the right things after the interview. After the race was done. But yeah, Tony just did Tony, and he wanted, I think he kind of almost came into this weekend with a point to prove, to try to win and beat Cameron.
I think so. And obviously the Yamaha, I'm not saying this down on horsepower because I don't know the horsepower numbers, but definitely Yosh has their bike dialed in better off the corner, and it allows it to get to top speed quicker. And so that was a concern. The one thing about Josh Herrin, though, Jason, that he told me Sunday morning was that there was no contact. And I said, what did people say about leaving the door open? Everybody's telling me I left the door open. But Josh said, but I had other chances to get back by Tony. And he goes, my motorcycle is faster. So I knew that if I was right on the tailpipe of Tony, Josh was confident that he'd be able to draft and pass for the win. And I think that he even showed that he could do that on Sunday if he needed to. So to me, it wasn't like that was it. The whole entire race was turn 5. I just think it was a little bit of Josh Herrin not rolling off the throttle necessarily.
Not wanting to give up the spot, right. I mean, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with
you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's, and that's
yes.
As much as Tony was involved with Cameron in turn 1 at Road America last year in a very similar situation where Beaubier, rolled off the throttle to save it at one point. Tony
and stood the bike up.
Tony refused to.
Yep.
So it's one of those situations. It's done and dusted, and then we forward to the next day, Jay, which is obviously Josh Herrin winning that race in what was a race that you could say not only was he not angry from the day before he let that go, but he learned, and I think he put in a great performance and a masterful ride to beat Beaubier by half a second. And to watch Tony Elias crash last corner, last lap was an interesting topic because afterwards, basically what Tony said was he gets in there, he needs to square the corner off, give a little bit more room, and obviously Jason described that a little bit more in a second of why you would do that, because he needed to get a run on Josh because Josh's bike was faster. And then all of a sudden, Cameron sneaks up on the inside, and it startled Elias. So he's already at the limit on the brakes, startled him, and he flinched, hit the lever, and down he goes. Not a, this is the end of Tony Elias, not a beginning of Tony Elias crashing, not any of that stuff. Just a straight up race mistake. But kind of describe for the listeners, Jay, what was going on in that lap and why he needed to do what he did and how Cam came in there and all that crap.
Well, and all that crap.
All that crap. So there's a lot of crap going on. Good crap.
I think that when you look at it, Greg, the mistake that Tony made had no bearing on the ultimate result. Maybe for second it did, but Herron rode such a tremendous last lap as well, because when you look at how Tony went by going into 5 on that last lap, and Tony did exactly what I wish everybody would do. He held himself pretty tight. In other words, when you're in second, you've got to make up a decision pretty quickly if you're going to go try to outbreak a guy into 5. But Tony thwarted those thoughts and ideas of the other riders real early by kind of keeping his bike over to the left, almost having somewhat of a mid-track entry into turn 5. So right off the bat, he kind of showed that I'm not going to open the door and let anybody try to come up underneath me. Fast forward to the carousel, and Herron was so fast through there all weekend long. And in this race specifically, he was tremendously fast, had a lot of corner speed all the way through the corner. And Herron got up underneath Tony going into the chicane and controlled that speed in between the left and the right to get the bike turned and get it out of there. Because if you watch the replay of that race, and I've watched it a couple times now, I think MotoAmerica actually reposted it, so I got to see a little bit of that last lap on Instagram. Herron does such a good job getting out of that chicane. He opens up 6 bike lengths, on the exit of that turn. And then when he goes down into Canada corner, he holds his bike tight. There was no way that somebody was going to try to go up underneath him into that corner. And then when they came up to the last turn, Josh did it again. He held his bike over to the right, probably like you said, Greg, because he felt like he could win from the apex of the last corner to the start-finish line. But what he did there that was so good is he made the decision early that he wasn't going to open up the door to let somebody try to slide up underneath him. Controlled his apex speed and ended up winning the race. Now, what was going on behind him? Tony opened up the last corner, which is something we've seen him go under people there before. We've seen him kind of always go to the apex. He opened it up to try to keep his roll speed up, so that essentially when he saw Herron going a little bit tighter, Tony opened up the line. When he did that, Cameron took advantage of that and went up underneath him. Just spooked Tony ever so slightly. And it's weird to think that at the level that we can make those mistakes, but you see the best riders in the world do it on any given weekend. And just a little tiny bit too much front brake. But I think the thing that really hurt him more than anything, Greg, was that right handlebar had broke off, hadn't it? So, they had, let's just say they had 30 seconds on Kyle Wyman and Jake Gagne at that point, and Jake Lewis. The points that Tony threw away there was probably a lot more painful than the actual crash itself. If he could have just got up and finished, he would have got some points, but he walks away from Road America with nothing in that race. And Cameron's 9 points behind now. So again, Road America plays a pivotal point in our points championship.
Let's talk about speeds. Okay. Just, as comparison speed. So if you look at the speeds that were recorded by Moto-America, Cameron Beaubier was right there with Josh Herron, Garrett Gerloff there. They're all at 135.0, 183. 135, where'd they come from? 183.0, 183.4, 183.4. So when you look at those speeds, even Jake Gagne, 183.8 is right there.
Yep.
Right. But it's getting to those speeds. So where those speeds are measured is a whole different thing. The one thing I do have to say though, Jason, which is really, really weird and interesting, is Kyle Wyman on that Ducati, also 183.449, identical speeds to Tony, to Cameron, and to Garrett. So there's got to be something there. But the fact that Kyle Wyman on a bone stock Ducati is able to do those speeds is great. It's a great thing to see because we talked about the winglets and 70-something pounds of downforce and going over the hill. And it's part of the reason he's able to maintain his speed, having zero traction control in 6th gear and being able to use those winglets to get top speeds out of that bike is pretty incredible without doing anything. I mean, it's about as stock as it comes. So
one of the things I talked to Kyle about was he was mentioning to me that they're working on absolute lean angle feel. So he's got this thing right now where they get the bike kind of on the edge of the tires, like through long corners, like the carousel, and the bike is just a little bit nervous for him. And so they've gone a couple different ways with offsets and things like that to try to get the bike better. And this is all part of when you add things to a motorcycle. Some other things might start coming to the forefront. And from the stock settings that they had originally, they had gone a direction that they had gone on other bikes. And it's kind of proven now they've gone the absolute opposite direction. So again, it's a little bit for Kyle. It's a bit of a work in progress. I think that the next track that we go to in Utah is a track that he knows really well from doing all the schooling and things he's done out there. And I think that he's got a lot of laps with the champ school guys out there at Utah. It'll be interesting to see. It's going to be the type of track, Greg, where you spend some time at lean angle, like quite a bit of time at lean angle, even on the shorter version of the track that we're going. It'll be interesting to see if they can get that bike sorted a little bit, because it's a fairly smooth track. And I'm hoping that they can get that kind of sorted for him a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look
All
at
right, Jay,
look at the championship, I was just going to say, when you look at the championship, it's Tony Elias is first, 9-point lead now over Cameron Bobier. Gerloff is third, 47 back. JD, who really was a non-factor, as was Matthew a little bit this weekend. Skoltz, neither one of them were really big factors over the weekend. JD was there kind of a little bit for the first race, had that problem and went back. But he's fourth. I think the big mover this weekend is Heron. 55 points back now is Josh. And when you look at it, Greg, that's only two. If you can get a couple race wins and a couple guys fall out, I mean, there's a couple people that could really play themselves back into this. Skoltz sixth, Jake Lewis seventh, Cameron Peterson, Dave Anthony, who we're hoping is at home recovering from his motocross accident. For those that didn't know, he didn't line up on Sunday because prior to the races of the weekend, he had fallen off his motocross bike, and Sunday morning after warm-up, he rushed himself to the hospital because he wasn't feeling very well. They found out he had broken ribs. So he sits in ninth, and then Kyle Wyman 10th. So, it'll be interesting to see kind of what goes down at the next race.
Now, Jason, of course, coming up in a few days, we're going to have our MotoAmerica special podcast as we lead into the race weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to beat up these next classes because we'll talk about them more during that podcast. But let's go ahead and brush over Supersport first of all. In race number 1, Hayden Gillum was victorious by 0.6 of a second over Bobby Fong and Sean Dillon Kelly. So it was ridiculous racing. Yamaha over 2 M4 X-Star Suzukis. Then you had Richie Escalante, Yamaha. I mean, basically, these are all Yamahas till we get back to 9th place. It's Richie Escalante, Bryce Prince, Josh Hayes, Brandon Posh, Nick McFadden, and then Danny Eslick on a Kawasaki in 9th place, and then Jason Aguilar. You had Braden Ort, Ventura, Solitz in 13th, Caroline Olsen scoring 2 points in 14th, and Lucas Silva, your top 15, scoring points there. In race number 2, it was Bobby Fong, again, Suzuki, M4 X-Star Suzuki, with his teammate Sean Dillon Kelly only 0.3 behind him. And then you had Hayden Gillum in 3rd. PJ Jacobson, who crashed out of the first race, was in 4th. Then Posh in 5th. Escalante, Bryce Prince, Hayes in 8th. Nick McFadden 9th. Danny Eslick in 10th, just ahead of his Kawasaki teammate. They're not really teammates, but they ride Cowies. Braden Ort. Ashton Yates. Aaron Yates.
Aaron
my
Yates.
God, I've got it.
How many times have we said that, though? We've said that all the time. I do it all. I
Ashton, Jared Nassani, Corey Ventura, and Benjamin Smith with a result for him. So, Jason, looking at this stuff, Supersport was great racing up front in both races. But go ahead and give us a brief overview of what you saw.
Well, the M4 X-Star Suzukis, they've got just 2 incredible riders right now, and that team has done a lot of homework during the offseason, and we noticed it in Atlanta. The bikes are incredibly fast. Both riders did what they needed to do what they had to the second day to beat Hayden Gillum, who rode his ass off all weekend. Did hate him. It's the best weekend overall that we've seen from Gillum, with a win and a third on the course. But really, Bobby and Sean Dillon Kelly on the last lap of the first race, Bobby, it looked like he had kind of a little bit of a plan. Sean Dillon goes, SDK goes by him and Gillum down the back straightaway and kind of thwarted everything up for Bobby, in the sense that Bobby had to draft past his teammate or get by him in the last corner to end up second the first day. But Bobby came out swinging the next day, was quick in warm up. Sean Dillon Kelly goes 19 flat, fastest lap of the weekend of a 600 on the last lap of the second race. Kid 17 just blows me away. I think a couple takeaways too. PJ Jacobsen, he finished fourth the second day. Wasn't really a factor in the race, but he crashed away the points lead on the first day in turn 6. I think that was a bit of a story, Greg, that we'll talk about, for our podcast next week. Great to see Brandon Posh back, coming back over from England and doing that ride for TSE. There's a number of storylines. I think Josh Hayes left that track feeling a little bit deflated in the sense that, 7th and 8th place finishes aren't really what Josh is about, what he's racing for. His bike was definitely down on power. Talking to Melissa, she's like, I gave my rider a bad bite kind of thing.
Yeah.
She was out riding the 600 on Monday morning, and I would love to have got some comments from her what she thought of it on Monday morning. But Greg, and I'm asking you this because you and I haven't even talked about it, but does it seem to you like just the whole field in general has made a big step this year? Like, our racing in 600 is fast. Like, it just seems like there's just a lot of fast guys now in our class there.
Yeah, there is. Heading into the season with no Valentin DeBees in the class and, JD Beach graduating out, I think we kind of had that impression like, all right, cool. It's going to be Hayden Gillum. He's just going to walk away with this thing. But it's not turning into that, because it seems like one of the biggest jumpers is Richie Escalante. I think he's made a good step in speed. It feels like that. I haven't gone back to check all the results and, total race time versus how far back he's finished. I think Richie's got some work to do. He knows he has work to do. And it's the same thing he's been talking about last year, which is he's got to get good starts, and he's really got to work on his racecraft with brand new tires and how that works for him. I think if he can make that jump and get to the point where he can ride and stay up front for 3/4 of the race, then you're going to find Richie Escalante more consistently up front. Now you've gone from 3 riders up front to 4. And then, if Hayes continues to race, I think he's going to figure it out, especially some of these tracks we go to that aren't high horsepower. I don't know the story, Jay, what Danny Eslick is going to do on that Bartcon Racing Faro Performance Cowie. Is he going to do any more of those? Because if he gets that sorted out and gets comfortable on the Cowie, bloink, there he is. And of course, if Posh stuck around, I know he's got some racing to do in Moto 3 in British Superbike, but there's just a lot of the pace just seems, well, I think the difference is, Jason, that we've seen more racing this year, than we have in the past years, because it was either JD Beach or Garrett Gerloff or even Hayden Gillum checking out. Now, all of a sudden, we have margins of victories that are half a second. And so to me, it feels like Supersport is faster. It feels like it's more competitive. And I really enjoy watching and commentating those races.
Well, you said you hit it on the head. If someone had said to me that Sean Dillon Kelly was going to be 19 points out of the championship after Road America round, I didn't know who Sean Dillon Kelly was. I hate that I didn't know who he was before this. And it goes back to, Chris Orch really studies a lot of different series around the world. He's kind of the guy that, if he continues to get better, he is an absolute player in this thing. And I saw Bobby Fong Sunday morning in the elevator at the hotel. We were coming down, and I was asking him about, hey, what did you think about Saturday and what, with Sean and all that, the racing? He's like, because I'd have done the same thing. He's like, there was no animosities. And honestly, Greg, how many mistakes have you seen Sean Dillon Kelly make this year?
Not many. Barely any.
I don't even know if I've seen one.
Maybe a little here and there.
I don't even know if I've seen one.
I think he got in deep in one corner, right?
He got booted off the track in Atlanta. At Daytona, there was a bad pit stop, and the kid sat on the bike during that pit stop. Zero animation, just sitting there, just chilling. There was nothing that was getting, blowing his skirt up. He was cool, calm, collected. You'd have thought he'd been doing it for a million years. I'm impressed by him. And right now, when you look at the points, what's crazy is PJ Jacobsen led the points coming into this round. Now he's 5th. That shows how close our championship is in 600 Supersport right now. Gillum leading 7 points over Bobby Fong, and the aforementioned Richie Escalante that you talked about. I agree with you on that, what you said. I think that always in the middle of the races, you and I are always pointing to the TV going, hey, here comes that silver bike in the background. He's on a charge. He's only 16 points out of the championship. And I don't think we've seen the best of him yet at all. I think we've seen him on the podium. I know we have in Atlanta, but we haven't seen the best of him yet. And then SDK is 4th. He's 19 points out. And championship leader coming into the weekend, PJ Jacobsen, He's 21 points back now. So you got 5 guys right now that are less than a full points paying win race for the race out of the championship. 21 points covers our top 4. Good, our top 5. Great racing.
Yeah, and you can see all that stuff on the app, the MotoAmerica Live Plus. Jason, let me ask you something. How quick is 0.187 of a second? So a little bit over a tenth of a second. How quick is that in real life?
Pretty quick. That's pretty quick.
All right, that's the combined margin of victory for 2 races for Rocco Landers in the Liqui Junior Cup class.
Wow.
So this kid played it right, and he won on drafting and passing by 0.095 in race number 1, and then decided that was just, too far of a margin. So he decided he wanted to make it closer, and he won the second race by 0.092 of a second. All right, so race number 1, it was Landers, Dallas Daniels, which are, basically how we've seen most of the races finish. Kevin Olmedo. Then it was Damian Jigaloff, Dominic Doyle, Kettleson, Reese, Lockhoff, Blackman, Burleson, Edwards, T. Cobbs, Standish, Dunham, and Radio. The last race winner from last round was Cameron Jones. He was in 16th. On race 2 side of things, the Liqui Junior Cup, you had Landers, Olmedo, Daniels, so they switched. Jigaloff, who was in the mix early, made a mistake, missed a gear coming out of one of the corners. You have Doyle, Burleson, Lockhoff in 7th. Flores in 8th, Radio in 9th, Gage Reese, Dunham, Hobbs, Edwards, Standish, and Cameron Jones in 15th spot. Yeah. So for Rocco Landers, I mean, he is just mopping up the series. He's only had 1 finish where he hasn't won a race, right? It's been 5 of 6 for the kid. So
he's riding great, Greg. I mean, look, he rides beyond his years right now. He's 14. He is a kid. Like when you get around him and you talk to him, and there's a lot of animation. There's a lot of excitement. He likes talking about things other than racing that are just funny to him. And you get around him, and he's, I got to spend a little time with him on Monday and Tuesday as well at Road America, and his dad Stoney. Even though we'd been around like the same time for so many years, I've gotten to know Stoney now. I mean, I didn't really know him before. So he's so reserved and kind of quiet and just kind of chills out. And his kid is off the rev limiter and just having fun, which I love. I think it's great. A lot of personality there for Rocco. Like right now, and I've seen him race a lot. Right now, he's doing all the right things. He's mistake free. He plans things if he's been doing this for 20 years. He plans his races. He looks at big picture. He watches what's going on with the guys around him. That said, it's nice to see a couple guys. Well, Dallas Daniels had already stepped it up, but Kevin Olmedo this weekend stepped it up too. And I believe that, watching Kevin ride, he is only. How can I explain this? When I watch people, and when I watch kids ride, or when I watch any student or any of that ride, I look at it in a different way maybe than most. And Kevin is literally a couple things away from being a guy that can win these races kind of consistently. There's a couple things that I see him do that I feel that if could be changed a little bit, that he will put himself in more positions, let's just say, Greg, to possibly win these races. Because this young man has tremendous bike skills as well. We've seen him do some crazy things on these little bikes. Dallas Daniels is just pissed off. Like if you see Dallas right now, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. You can see in his post-race interviews that losing now is, being on the podium every weekend isn't good enough. He wants to be winning these races. He's proven that he can run the pace. He will win these races eventually. I just feel like he's getting frustrated.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I feel.
I do like,
but he's more than capable.
He does, yeah, and I do like he takes responsibility too. You know what I mean? He's just like,
he does.
It's my fault. That. My fault.
I love it.
Team gave me a great bike. So my bad. That. You know what I mean? So We'll talk in more detail about Liqui Junior Cup later on for sure. So what do you want to talk about next? We have Stock 1000 or Twins. You pick it, pal.
Well, let's go Stock 1000.
All right, Stock.
Because it was a doubleheader weekend, and I think that the racing this weekend was incredible. Again, we saw some really close action. It was good to see Jeff May back. I know there was a lot of people talking about Jeff May's coming back and riding this class and riding that class. Well, look, Jeff May can't get on a proper superbike right now. Would you rather have him not be at the racetrack and not racing, or would you rather have him be there racing against in the 1000 Superstock class? For me personally, I'd rather see him there racing.
Me too.
So,
And you know what? Cow
you
is,
know what I mean?
Cow is putting up the contingency money so he could possibly pay for his weekends, make a little bit of dough. Great. Good to have him there.
I just don't see any downside to that. And if you want to see how good you are, why wouldn't you want to measure yourself against somebody like Jeff May? Andrew Lee, who won the championship last year, is welcoming it. He's like, I love it. It's good. Jeff May's been around. He's been around the world and raced. So it's good for me to be racing against a guy like him.
Yeah, and he's raising the bar. And it's not like Jeff May showed up and just checked out. He won. Jeff May won race number 1 by 15 hundredths of a second. That's 0.015. And he didn't do the fastest lap of the race. That goes to Stefano Mesa. So Mesa, does a 16.6 and Jeff May did a 16.7. The rest of the field's got to catch up, including Andrew Lee, who's still, to his credit, not 100% fit. He's not. But still 17.6, 1 second. Travis Wyman, who was a standout last year, still in the mix on the BMW. Then Gilbert. And you had Corey Alexander, who's back to racing, and it looked like it was going to be a one-off for him. He finishes 6th in race number 1. Then it was Thornton, Ferris, Schneiderman, and Rhett Norman in your top 10. Now, race 2 was a bit of a different story. Jeff May had an early exit, Jason, and then it was Stefano Mesa with a rider who stepped up, Andrew Lee, and he beat Andrew Lee by 1/10 of a second, 0.174 over the Franklin Armory Graves Kawasaki. So, and then it was Corey Alexander who ended up finishing a lonely 3rd, no doubt about it. Yep. Then it was Miles Thornton, Aaron Reisinger. I don't actually know Aaron.
Yep.
Rhett Norman.
I don't know Aaron either. Yeah.
Schneiderman. Zachary Schumacher. Melissa Paris in 9th place. A good run from Melly P. And then Philippe McLean on that one. So the racing up front, it's Road America. It can go either way, but it was really good. And I loved watching Mesa and Andrew Lee ride together, but you could just kind of tell in race number 2 that Mesa just kind of had a bike that would launch off the corner a little bit better than Lee's bike.
Andrew literally said to me after the race, he's like, Jay, Mesa and Jeff were just a step ahead of me this weekend. They were just better than me this weekend. And the fact that, this is a guy that won the championship last year, had an incredible year, and he, just like Dallas Daniels, is like, hey, I got to step up my stuff. But the incredible part about that race too, and again, we'll go into this in more detail next week, is the fact that Jeff May crashed right in front of Stefano Mesa, literally right in front of him. And Mesa went off into the grass with 3 to go. It was going to be a race, basically, that Andrew Lee and Travis Wyman were going to settle amongst themselves. All of a sudden, Stefano Mesa is on a charge, and who says you can't catch people when you don't have a draft? He runs 2:16.5 to catch Andrew and Wyman. Wyman makes a big mistake in turn 1. We saw him I think he fell off in Canada Corner last year, did Travis, which was a shame because Michael Gilbert was already out. Jeff May obviously was already out, but Michael Gilbert led the points coming into here, had a mechanical in race 2. So there's a lot of shuffling in the points of where people could make up some time. So to see Travis tip off from what would essentially have been a podium position to getting no points, we'll see how that impacts his championship. But really, Mesa and May were the story of the weekend. It was too bad to see Jeff crash. Stefano Mesa, make no mistake about it, he's been around for a long time, Greg, down from South Florida. He is now leading our championship on a bike this weekend that was borrowed. So he came to Road America. He did the business. I'm hoping, all the chatter was he wasn't sure if he was coming west. I don't know how he doesn't continue to do the series leading the championship, because there is money to be won in this on the Kawasaki's. And I know he's probably made some decent money this year already, but Mesa rode really incredible. So I think moving forward, Utah is going to be interesting. And we'll kind of see how that goes in our Twins Cup class.
Good race.
What's that?
Good race.
Great race. At one point, we had 6 guys battling for this win in Twins Cup. And the neatest part about this class for me right now, I finally got to really go up and meet Chris Parrish on the weekend. He was actually pitted right across from the Team Norris Racing guys. So I got to go over and really talk to Chris. Program looks amazing. He ended up 8th in this race, but where I'm going with this, we had a top 6 battle that was pretty crazy. And it was really nice to see Drake Beecham come out on top, winning this race by a very narrow margin over Alex Dumas and Michael Barnes, with Chris Turner ending up 4th. Chris was a lot closer than what 4th place looks like here at under a half second. He actually ran off the track with 2 to go and ran a very quick quickest lap of the race, 29.7, with like 3 or 4 laps, 2 laps to go.
And I believe that's a Twins Cup lap record too, though, Jay. So, yeah,
I believe you're right. He's also on a Suzuki SV650. You got Darren James, Jason Madama, Jeffrey Tiger. Great to see him make the trip out there. Chris Parrish, who I talked about, 8th, and Curtis Murray, 9th. Those two guys were battling for wins at VIR. So it kind of shows you this class, like one weekend you're battling for the win. The next weekend you're battling for 8th and 9th. We had Cooper McDonald 10th, Joe Blasius, Robert Fisher, Daniel Adams, Chris Bays, and Ned Brown rounded out our field as far as points paying positions. But I think it's kind of a nice flow that we got in this class now, Greg, because you got some kids that came up from our Liqui Moly class in Beecham and Dumas and Joe Blasius and things. And then they're racing against some real seasoned veterans like Michael Barnes, Chris Turner, even Madama and Chris Parrish, Curtis Murray. These guys are, again, it's kind of like Superstock, isn't it? Where some of these kids can test themselves against kind of the older guard and see how they stack up.
Yeah, obviously the field is thick with riders. 31 in this one. We expect a good amount for the next one as well. So it's that mix of new and mix of old riders. And I think a lot of people thought with Michael Barnes' performance at Road Atlanta that the Ducati was some type of rocket ship, and everybody's just kind of like, let's go to the banquet now and just give Michael Barnes the #1 plate. But
yeah.
If you look at it, it was a Yamaha win, a Suzuki second, and a Ducati third. When recently have we had that kind of parity in any of our classes? And it just shows you that at a high horsepower track, or a high speed track, I should say, like Road America, where a lot of horsepower can pay dividends, that Ducati wasn't the missile. Michael Barnes did a competitive lap time. He was the second fastest lap. He did a 1:30.67. Dumas did a 1:30.69, but Dumas did it in a different way. You know what I mean? He did it with more corner speed and the things he does. Your race winner's fastest lap of the race was a 1:30.8. And of course, like I said, Turner did that 29.7. So I like the parity. I thought the racing was good. I thought that Dumas hadn't been up at the front in a while since last year. And I thought he looked very gathered. He looked calm. And he knew that Beecham had a bit of a faster motorcycle when he got on the straightaway, and he did everything that he could. So I enjoyed watching the race, especially the beginning of the season that the Liqui Moly Junior Cup champion had going on this year, Dumas. And I love watching Drake Beecham race anyway, always have. And then you throw.
Can I ask you a question on another note about this race? Yeah. Is Beecham's bike bent?
I don't know.
Did you watch it coming down the straightaways?
I did.
When they've got a head-on camera view, and I'm sure they've heard this because I've had so many people come up and ask me about it. But I think I saw it in Atlanta or I saw it in VIR, one of them. But when the camera shot is him facing us, I can see his rear wheel.
Yeah, that's so weird, isn't it? It's got to be bent.
And when you think about it, like we've gone to Atlanta, we've gone to VIR, and we've gone to Road America, all predominantly rights. I hope when we go to Utah, all of a sudden he doesn't realize, hey, my bike won't turn left as good as it does right, or whatever.
Unless that's him. That's him, and he's got it set up. He's got a special offset.
He might have it. He might have it. But you know what? In closing on this one, real quick, Greg, Drake has been a kid that we've seen in Liqui Moly. He's gone through his struggles. He's gone through some things, but you know what? He's stayed at it. He's continued the grind. And he's done really well at the beginning of the year. He's finished every race. Mm-hmm. And what's incredible about it is he's third in points right now. But listen to this. We got Chris Parrish leading the class at 69 points. Barney's only 3 back. 5 back of the leader is Drake Beecham. So our top 3 guys are 5 points. And then you got Curtis Murray, who's only 6 points back. So our top 4 riders right now are separated by 6 points. And then you have Dumas in 5th. That's our top 5. He's 28 points back. So he's got a little bit of work. These guys still have a double round coming up, I think later on in the year. I believe it's at Pittsburgh. So there's still a lot of racing to be run. But this class, like you said, has shown a tons of diversity. It's been really fun to watch. You and I don't actually call the race, but we watch it.
Yep.
And it's been a fun one to watch.
All right, let's move on to some other race results, Jay. Let's talk about American Flat Track, because they were in at the Red Mile in Lexington, Kentucky. A lot of people didn't think that race was going to happen. It did get going. Mikey Rush, Shayna Texter, and Kevin Stallings out of Indianapolis Stallings. I can't remember.
Stallings, yeah. Stallings. Kevin Stallings,
yeah, that's what I thought. In the singles class. On the twins, the premier class, that was, let's see, hold on. I know who won it. That was our boy Jared Mees. He mopped up on that one. So it was Mees who won by 56 hundredths of a second over Briar Bauman. That was a great race. And then Brian Smith back on the podium with a Kawasaki Ninja 650. It was nice to see Smith back in the mix. And then you had Steven Vandeker. All the next I'm going to talk about are all Indians. Wiles, Fisher, Bronson Bauman, Robert Pearson. And then Jake Johnson was the first of our Yamahas. For those people that were following Roger Hayden's progress, in a text message I was talking to Roger, he missed it by one transfer spot. He missed the main by one transfer spot. So good for him.
Said he had fun though, huh?
Yeah.
Said he had a really good time.
He said he had fun. And confirmation of what ails the Yamaha, like what JD Beach thinks ails that Yamaha in terms of lap times, is confirmed by what Roger Hayden was saying, which is also one of the reasons they wanted Roger to race it. They had a test Monday after, and you had to have a pro license, and so this whole thing kind of unfolded. All right, let's go to Lucas Oil. Yeah, Lucas Oil Pro Motocross. Eli Tomac ends up winning, let's see, the Moto 2, but I don't know, where's the overall, Jay?
He won the second Moto.
He won the second one, yeah. So it was Roxon going 1-2. Tomac went, let's see, 5-1.
He went 5-1, I believe.
5-1.
Yeah.
Zach Osborne in third. My boy, Jason Anderson.
Your boy.
Yep. My boy. Marvin Muscan, Cooper Webb, Blake Baggett, Dean Ferris, Justin Barsha, and then Justin Bogle. So that looked like some decent racing in there.
The greatest part about doing this podcast with you now is it's kind of our deal. So it's kind of fun because I feel an obligation to you to make sure that I can watch all these races. So I'm flying home yesterday, and I was trying to stream some things. Anyways, I went to bed last night, Greg, and I watched the motocross. I was like, I watched the first moto of the Moto of the 250 class. They had huge lightning come in the air. Like, it just started pouring. Guys were crashing. They had to call the race like 2 or 3 laps from the end because it was raining. And then I watched the 450. But I fell asleep last night before I could watch the second motos. No. I'm like, Greg's going to kill me. Because, there's times when you pick me up when I don't know what the results are. Like, I didn't get to watch any of the flat track. I didn't get to see any of it. And I've actually been watching it all this year. But that class, the 450 class in Colorado, is kind of Eli Tomac's stomping grounds. But when the moto started in the 450 class, it was gnarly. The conditions were brutal, and Roxon just checked out. He won by like 30 seconds. But as is the Tomac case in Supercross, it's like, you know how it's always like that one thing that kind of seems like it screws him up or holds him up, or he should be winning. He had a problem with his goggles, so he had to come in, and he had, like, his roll-offs were like flopping all over the place, or whatever he was using were not good. So he ended up 5th in the first moto, and then he kind of walked, I think, in the second moto.
Let me ask you this, Jay.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, when I was working pro motocross, doing PA announcing, we were in Colorado, and it ended Eli's season. Like, he was out front, he was gone.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? Remember? Like,
I remember that crash, both shoulders, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was bad crash. And it is his home race. You know, he's a Colorado resident, his home race, all his family, friends show up, whatever. But would you ever put anything on that? Like, all right, let me just get out of this weekend. Just get out of this weekend with as many points as I can. You know, it's my home race. I've got a lot of pressure on me. You know, is that ever something like, have you ever gone to a track and just had like the bugaboo, the thing that was just like, oh man, I just got to get through this. I mean, we all did that at Daytona. That's a whole nother thing. But, you know,
I was just going to say Daytona was like that for me. Like, I always felt like really early in the weekend at Daytona, I knew that if I had a package that could win or not win or whatever. And I think that, you know, and you got to remember, Greg, I spent 2 years on a factory team, and that was it. So going to Daytona and racing against the factories was always a little bit of a hard thing. Of course, in Supersport 750 Supersport, I didn't have to really race against any factories or things. So that made it a little bit maybe easier for me mentally to go into it. I do remember going there on the attack bike, feeling like I could win the 200 on it. And we had a problem early on with the exhaust that I thought the motor was blowing. I pulled into the pits, got off the bike, looking around, and Richie goes, oh, the exhaust is cracked. So I went back out a lap down and ran real competitive. But I think with Eli, though, he's won there since that. That was a horrendous accident, and they still have that part of the track in there because it seems like all the outdoor tracks change a little bit from year to year.
Yeah,
and this year was no different. They changed a couple of places at this track. Yeah, what they call it, Thunder Valley, I believe, is what they call it. But you know, I just think he had a little bit of bad luck in the first race because it was pouring. I came down sideways, and he doesn't generally get the best starts. He was coming through the field, then his goggles were. A lot of guys were making pit stops though to something we don't see very often, obviously in motocross, to get new goggles thrown
Yeah, but
on.
some of those pit stops are really good, by the way, and some of them were like,
Correct.
whoops, fumbling around, and you lose a little bit of time.
Yeah. So I don't know. He came back and won the second moto. I don't think that stuff sticks in his brain too much. And I feel like when you're Eli Tomac, he feels like he's the odds-on favorite. But Roczen's riding so amazing this year, and he's got a lot of support from a lot of people. And I'm hoping that whatever little ailment he has as far as his conditioning is going away, because obviously these outdoor motos, I think Greg, are basically a lot harder than Supercross for these guys. The amount of distance and how rough it gets, but they're going on to round 4, and I seen Cirillo won the in 250 race, 250 class. It was good to see him win. I think Cooper was the quick guy. Did you watch any of that race? Did you see it at all?
250s, I didn't. No. Mm-mm.
Okay, well, I saw one thing. I actually watched the second moto of that before I fell asleep there in the second moto, the 450. But what was crazy is, like, when you watch the interviews between Cia Cirillo and Cooper in the race, the second moto, Cia Cirillo, he jumped off the racetrack, and they had banners all the way up alongside the track, so he couldn't actually get on the racetrack anywhere.
Oh, I did see that, actually. Yeah, I saw that.
Did you see this? And Cooper,
yeah.
Okay, Cooper jumped. Anyways, Cia Cirillo goes up over the banners, and he let off the gas, and he did all that, and he let Cooper go. He ran Cooper down. And Cooper was the faster of the two, okay? But Cia Cirillo ran him down. Cooper screwed up, crashed, okay?
Yeah.
Picked his bike up, made this big charge, ended up second. The first thing Adam says is, "Hey, I feel bad. I ran off the track. I got on the safest place I could." This is the first thing he says when he gets out of his helmet. Like he had done everything right in this day and age of race direction wanting to get involved in every decision that's made. The kid did there was no advantage made. Cooper gets on there and just bitches immediately about, oh, if race direction doesn't do something about that, this and that. And I thought, wow, what a contrast. Cooper basically threw the race away. He crashed. If he wouldn't have crashed, he may have won. But it just was an interesting interview for me. So Cooper, I think, is a little bit frustrated. He hasn't won an overall this year, but he's finished second to Adam a lot.
He'll figure it
after
out.
winning the first round.
Yeah, he'll figure it out. Real quick, Jason.
Greg,
real quick.
Yes.
On the GNCC side of things in Odessa, New York, Tomahawk, Caleb Russell wins his 4th GNCC of the year, round 7 in the XC1 Open Pro Bike class. Caleb trying to stomp his way to another national title. All right, go ahead.
Jerez. We're going to Jerez this week, World Superbike. And speaking of newly repaved tracks, you and I were talking about some things before we got on our podcast about a certain track that's getting repaved here in America right now, or it's going to be later in the year for our series when they get there. But Jerez has been repaved apparently, and I think World Superbike is kicking off. Last time we were in Imola, Jonathan Ray obviously rode and won there both races. They didn't get to do the Super Pole race. What do you think, Greg? Do you think it's Batista again? Do you think it's Ducati World again when they get to Jerez? Or do you think that, the likes of Johnny Ray or Alex Lowe's or Vandermark, those guys are going to have anything for him?
Okay, this is what I really hope. This is what I really hope.
Sounds like
I hope
hurting you. Yes.
I just hope we have a race. That's all I care about at this point. I just want to race.
I'm with
I just want to see everybody race it up. I'd like to see 4 or 5 riders, 6 riders going at it. I don't want to see Moto 3 style, not on super bikes. That's just dangerous. Okay, but I would like to see good racing. We know Ducati is the most successful team in World Superbike in Jerez. Chaz Davis has won quite a bit of races there in the past. So I think everyone's got a good shot at it the way Jerez is designed. I think in talking with Jonathan Ray, as we have, I think he's pretty confident, of being competitive at that one. So I'm going to hold off until I see first practice, and then I'm going to give you an answer. Like, that's such a cheesy bailout.
That's great.
But I think it's with the repaving, everything else, I think it's kind of wide open. It'll be interesting to see what Pirelli ends up having at the racetrack that's going to be able to handle the beating. And that could be a defining factor, not to poo-poo anything else. But there's a lot of good stories going on coming out of World Superbike in Jerez. So I would definitely encourage everyone to keep an eye on it for sure. What about you? What do you think?
Well, we're getting to that time of year where we know in Thailand, we know when they went to Thailand, we had some very hot conditions. With a newly repaved track, I think you bring up a great point with the Pirellis. What it's going to do, the weather over there is going to be in the mid 80s. So it's not like it's going to be completely steamy hot, but it's going to be warm enough to see what bikes work best. I got to think that the Kawasaki's and the Yamahas have a chance to be a little bit closer because they've done they've been racing there. And they kind of know how their bikes work in the heat and other things. The Ducati just seems like it's been so good everywhere they've gone. I think there were some other factors in Imola that held Battista back a little. I think the weather was a little bit challenging. I don't put any emphasis on the fact that it's a new track to him. He tested there 2 weeks prior, and you've heard me say it a million times. There's no such thing to me as a full blown home track advantage, if you will. But this is a place that he's going to have a lot of time around being in MotoGP. I'm with you. I just hope it's good fun racing. And I think we're getting into that point of the year now for these guys in World Superbike, June, July, where something's got to change before the summer break and the Suzuka 8-hour and things. I know the Kawasaki guys just got done testing at Suzuka. I feel that now's the time that someone's got to go after Battista right now in order for them to be a real factor in the championship for after the summer break. Because they come to Laguna in what, Greg? Like we're going to be there in 4 weeks?
Yeah,
at Laguna Seca. And I think they have like a little summer break after that, right? They got the Suzuka 8-hour and a bit of a summer break.
Eight weeks or something, yeah. Because
they go here, they go Jerez, then Misano, and Misano's the week prior to Laguna or Donington. Is it Donington?
Yeah.
It's Donington that's a week prior. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to talking about that next week.
Did you see the post Jonathan Ray made on Instagram where he had kind of a long face and he's like, it was something like when they tell you that you have to do a full race distance test or whatever it was. Did you see that one?
No, honestly, I didn't see it.
I giggled. It's endurance racing is fun. Endurance testing, not so much fun.
Well, people like when you talk to people that ride motorcycles for a hobby and they think, man, it's got to be so much fun to go testing and go ride all these tracks. It is the hardest thing to do. Like it's so hard when you're at a track, and it's funny because it's really like crowds do motivate you. Obviously, like you get a little bit pumped up when you see all the people lining fences and you get people in the paddock and stuff. And then when the paddock is absolutely empty and there's not a single person there, and it's like, all right, we've got a litany of things that we have to test. I think it's really fun if you're on a new bike and you're trying to sort things out and you're playing with stuff. But when you're there to test tires or something specific where you're in the middle of the year, you kind of got the bike you have to race on. It is hard work.
Yeah, and it's not your bike, right? It's not your bike because you've got to share that bike. Now, Jason, just on a side note of endurance, before we move on, what's the longest stint?
Yes.
What's the longest stint? Not come into a pit stop and go back out, but what's the longest time that you were on the motorcycle when you go out and back in? Is it about 45 minutes, an hour, hour 10?
The longest I had ever done it was an hour and a half at Albacete, Spain, and it was pouring rain. And on top of that, and this is at night, by the way, they had a crash where there was oil on the track. So they kept on bringing in this big truck would come in and power wash the track during the red flag. Then the truck would leave, or not the red flag, during time behind the pace car. So I'm watching this, and the truck leaves, comes back, power washes again. Did that 3 times during the spin. In fact, the pace car, the safety car, spun out in front of us.
Oh, really? Oy.
Spun out in front of us. And it was Steve Plater that was leading, and I was in second. And then we had a whole litany of guys behind us during this race. But I was out there for an hour and a half. Yeah. And then actually I double stinted. So I was out there for 2.5 hours.
Did I ever tell you that I did a Weir endurance race one year? I don't know if it was 95 or 96. And this guy showed up with a Honda CBR 600. I want to say it was an F4i with a 9-gallon tank on it.
Oh my God. That must have been a dream to ride.
Oh my God.
Must have been perfect.
I mean, there was no tuck. I mean, I think it might've been 8 gallons, but it was, you go out and it was a 2-hour stint and you're just praying for the fuel light to come on. Just
wait. You rode that bike then?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, so you were actually, I thought you meant like you were at a race.
No. I rode it. So, I'm
dream.
pretty sure it was 96. So I was racing for a team. Like I was the backup rider. Right. And so once they knew they had the 2 guys, they were like, yeah, you go ahead and ride that Honda if you want to, no big deal. It was in Memphis Motorsports
Lucky
Park.
you.
Yeah, you ever ridden at Memphis Motorsports Park? It's a drag strip,
once.
like real fast turn one.
Yeah.
And the first lap, the guy goes, "All right, be careful on the front end." You go into turn one, I barely tip it in, the whole front would plow. And that's not like I'm some guy who is like, "Oh yeah, I do wheelies and I go to the lock." But yeah, that was like a 2-hour stint in Memphis, middle of the summer heat. I remember getting off that bike just like thinking, I'm going to need a garbage can to throw up in now.
So what did we learn from this? Greg White was a backup rider in Memphis in a horrible race conditions on a bike that had a 9-gallon tank that nobody else wanted to ride, so they stuck you on it. Is that what we learned from that?
All righty. So now it's time for our quick shift segment presented by ARAI. You're dumb.
Thank you.
Hey, Jason, did you know that all ARAI helmets are lined with an antimicrobial material? Yep, the interior liner gives you odor resistance, dirt resistance, and those antimicrobials that you love so much. You can stay fresher, longer, and enjoy a comfortable ride in the latest ARAI helmets. Now that sweaty season is here, go check out ARAIAmericas.com and pick up what you like. Then head down to a local dealer for fitment and grab yourself a new lid. ARAIAmericas with an S.com. All right, Jason, as you know, since you've been doing this podcast, well, this is episode 36, so that means you would have been doing it 34 times.
Thank you. Had
Hello,
a couple
Phillip.
little breaks in there in between in the last. Yeah.
Hello, Phillip Island. Hello, broken leg. We're in quick shift.
Yes.
We're going to talk for, I'm going to give you a topic. You're going to give me a topic. We're going to talk for about 60 seconds until you hear this.
Ding, ding.
And the moment you hear it, shut your stupid mouth. All right. That's the way it works. Yes, people, it never works like that.
Never happens that way. Yes.
All right, Jason. So look, I'm going to give you the first thing. So a great article on crash.net. After his win in MotoGP, Danilo Petrucci had said this about Ducati, his good buddy Andrea Vizioso, and more. He said, quote, "Since the beginning of the season, we've had two different targets. Mine was to win my first race. Then we have to reach the title or the target for Andrea. I will try to do everything for this target." Petrucci apologized repeatedly for the close pass on Dovizioso at turn one on the last lap and said this, quote, "This time was my time. I think I had a big opportunity. Next time, I will think about the championship. We'll see. I think we are the best team in MotoGP. The points are saying this, so we can work together to be the best at the end of the year." Jason, what do you think about that as a rider who's been on a factory team, on a multiple rider factory team, actually? How many other riders were there? Two or three other riders when you were on Yosh? I think there were three, right? So
there's four of us total.
But can you comprehend that? Like, okay, can you see like Petrucci and Dovizioso sitting down, going, having a powwow, saying, "Let's get you your first race win, and then let's work on my championship." Like, what do you think about all that?
You already know what I think about it. It pisses me off. I think it's stupid. I think it's like at the end of the day, you want your manufacturer that you race for to win the championship. That I don't disagree with, okay?
Right.
But we're talking race 6 here. There's 18 races left. Yeah. How do you know? And I don't even like talking like this. So you're going to give up a race win this early in the season? It smells way too Formula One-ish to me, way too like Tour de France to me, if you will, like in the sense that you got a guy who's going to win, you got 6 other guys that are going to pull along. It's not racing. To start with, what are you apologizing for? There was no contact made. You didn't do anything stupid. 2 guys ran wide. You took the line and you went on. That's been going on for the last 100 years of racing, anything around the world. I like the idea that Petrucci wants to be a team player. I think that a lot of this comes to the side of like, hey, Ducati, look, I'm being a team player. I'm ready to sign that new contract. I've only got a 1 year, and you've been talking about Jack Miller a lot, which we'll get into in a second. The problem is, Greg, is that it's too early in the season. If Dovi was to get hurt in the next race or two, and all of a sudden now you're thrown to the front, if you give up any race points this early in the season, it's just ridiculous to me. That being said, there's been a public battle for the second factory Ducati seat in MotoGP. Petrucci to keep it, Jack Miller to grab it, along with Francesco Bagnaia, who's obviously struggled, Greg, last couple. But Miller recently said that he will be happy to stay with the Pramac team for 2020, that he's content. It's obviously a good team. Do you think that this is Miller conceding that spot to Petrucci right off the bat?
That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, it's just.
Do you like that? Do you like that, Greg?
No, I don't like. Of course not.
Why?
I want to
Tell
see
me
Miller.
why you don't like it.
I'll tell you, because I like fight. Miller's got to go out there, and he's shown some speed. Obviously, he struggles kind of after the midway point. And you know what, dude? If I was in Miller's spot and I heard Petrucci publicly say what we just talked about, like, I got my race win for the year, I'm happy, I'd be like, dude, I'm going after it. I'm going after that seat because, I mean, I understand Petrucci's Italian. It's an Italian team. I get all that stuff. But if I'm Jack Miller, he's a fighter. So I really find it hard to believe. I mean, fighter. I get if he's saying, Jason, like, okay, I'm in this team. I really enjoy my team. And he's trying to, make sure that he keeps the team bolstered and keeps them happy and those types of things. But at this point, I would kind of have a different tone. And I'm not in his shoes. So I'm just sitting here bullshitting, right? Like, oh, yeah, if I was a factory rider. But I think what my talking points would be was I love Pramac Ducati. They're a great team. If I stay with them for 2020, I'll be happy. But I'm going after Petrucci. There's a lot of racing left. There's how many rounds? 13 rounds left. I'm going after it. I'm going to win races, and I'm going to grab that seat from this kid. I'd be putting the pressure on Petrucci. I'm just me.
And why is it just between those two? That's what I don't understand. Why wouldn't you have a let's just throw it out there. Why wouldn't you have a Quartararo on your plate? Why is
go knocking on Rins's door?
Hired at Rins's door. Like, the thing is that you talk about, Greg, that is so true is we've got a bunch of races left. Yes, if there was 5 races to go in the season, you can start thinking this way. If Petrucci goes on and wins 2-3 more races, and you see Jack Miller finish in top 5, obviously we know that neither one of them are going anywhere. But the MotoGP world to me just seems so strange, and so many seats are getting decided so early. Ask Honda right now how stoked they are with their second rider, and just see what they have to say. They decided their fate last year at this time.
Oh, speaking of Honda, GP1 is reporting on a possible move by Johan Zarco to World Superbike on a Honda, JP. Now, that was based on a tweet that came and went off of World Superbike's Twitter account. There are HRC MotoGP techs in the garage that have been seen at Honda World Superbike testing. Now, it looks that Honda's getting serious. Another name that's been brought up in this article was Alvaro Bautista. He gets those 1-year deals with Ducati. What do you think about either of these options, either both from a rider's side or a manufacturer's side, about Honda, Zarco, Bautista? What do you think?
Well, let's figure this out. KTM, I think, opened up the checkbook last year for Zarco, and it obviously hasn't worked out. What's he got there, Greg? 2-year deal? Has he got a 2-year deal? I can't remember.
No, I thought it was just a 1 year.
Well, maybe it is.
That's what I thought.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, maybe you could be right. I can't. Yeah. Anyways, look, the new Honda that's supposed to be coming out, I've heard it from numerous people now saying that this new Honda is going to be great, and Honda needs to do something because they haven't done anything other than in MotoGP for some time now. What's ironic to me, though, is that they're pretty competitive at BSB. They're still winning in Australia with Herfoss. But on the world stage of World Superbike, they have done nothing. And this weekend's going to be another throwaway weekend for them, as well as Camille is out. And so Zarco's got to be just pulling his hair out. But where's he going to go?
I don't know.
Where's Zarco going to go in MotoGP? He's going nowhere. He's not going back to Moto 2. So maybe he just goes to World Superbike and gets on a factory Honda.
But there are reports that this new Honda, whatever it's going to be, okay, CBR, whatever they're going to name it, it's an inline 4, not a V4 is what I'm hearing, whatever. I hear it's a ripper. Yep. I mean, a ripper. Like, I've heard horsepower numbers coming out of Japan.
Yeah.
I've heard all kinds of good things about this motorcycle. I don't know if they're going to debut it, at the Suzuki 8-Hour. I've kind of heard some things about it, but I could be way off on that. But nonetheless, if you go by the rumor mill, then it might be attractive, to Johan Zarco at this point. It might sound good if Honda says, and they say, listen, HRC's serious. We have some MotoGP. You only have a MotoGP tech at a Honda World Superbike test if you're serious. Look what Ducati's done with the V4R. You see Gigi Dall'Igna show up at World Superbike. It was like, oh, hello.
Yeah.
What's up, bro?
Yep.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, whatever. What do we know, right?
What are you going to do? You're going to put Lorenzo and Zarco on a factory Honda, and Quartararo takes Lorenzo's spot in MotoGP. You heard it here first.
All right. Listen, everybody.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Don't listen to me. I don't know shit. I don't know.
Don't listen to him.
Yes.
People, get out and watch racing this weekend. World Superbike is in Jerez. You can see AMA National Enduro. That's in Greensboro, Georgia. Canadian Superbike Series visits Grand Bend Motorplex. FIM World Endurance, JP, is at Oschersleben.
One of my favorites. Love that place.
FIM Moto is in Russia. Oh, and by the way, Pro Hill Climb is in Freemansburg, Pennsylvania. I love me some hill climb. Go out and watch. Next week, JP, we're going to have MotoAmerica exclusive one. We're also going to have our normal one where we're talking about World Superbike and all kinds of stuff. So with that, go ahead and get us out of here, Jason.
See you, folks.